Good afternoon, all, to everybody who's joined from Australia and New Zealand, and welcome all who's joined across the world. This is our guest for the month of September. Pretty excited to bring a good, really good topic in front of you. Firstly, disclaimer: still recovering from a bit of flu, like most here in Auckland. So that's why my voice is a little deep, but I'll do my best to stay uptight. Yep. So while I've got your attentions, guys, I'll probably give a quick spiel on a few things and an update from ISTQB and ANZTB. As most of you guys know already, we have introduced a brand new and ISTQB Foundation Level 4 certification. It's also been termed as CTFL 4. Now, this certification is not like an upgrade, it's a complete rewrite of our foundation exam, and it includes every single aspects of the cadence that goes on in the current SDLC or software delivery processes in lines of DevOps and Agile and all of that. So we are pretty excited to announce that. And again, won't go too much in details in these, but if you guys want more details, you guys could log on to anztv.org or to our official exam partners website iski.org, and you'll get all those details there. Most importantly here, unlike previously, now this exam is also available as a remote protractor, so you could pretty much set this exam from home. So again, all those details would be there on our website, so please have a look there if you need any further information. So yeah, so without further ado, let's kick into things that why we are here. That is our CGS. So again, like every single CGS that we have got, we encourage everybody to be more interactive, because that's the true value we get out of this forum. So guys, if you are logging from LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, you guys can post your questions there, and then we'll take all the questions towards the end. So yeah, really looking forward to an interactive section today. So today's presenter, we've got Raj Upadhyay joining us from Auckland, and again he's from Countdown, Auckland. Raj is very popular in Auckland, and he's probably one of the most technical testing lead, best testing leader I have known in Auckland. So really excited to have him. In fact, I also had an opportunity to work with him in the past. So really excited to have him and listen to him on what he has to share. So yeah, welcome, Raj.
Thank you, Ronak. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out and joining us. So, yep, so we can start. Thanks, Ronak. So, I'm starting with my presentation. And again, I would like to say thank you to Ancient TP and Ronak for having me here. So, today's topic is around security testing 101. So, what are the basic things which we covered as part of security testing? And what are the vulnerability, what are the industry standards, and what are the things which as a tester we can do to find out different kind of flaws, different kind of workflows which we can incorporate in our testing to make it more oriented around security. But it required a lot of discipline, a lot of team involvement, like your security ops team or your cyber security team. So with that, I'll start with brief of my intro. So, hi everyone, I am Raj Upadhyay. I am currently working as a chapter lead in Countdown, and I'm ex Microsoft. So with that, I have coming up with around 18 plus of experience in IT industry. So I have performed various roles like developer and solution architect, program manager, and a testing architect. And I have been involved into multiple testing related tools, including performance testing tool like JMeter and SpecFlow. So I have developed the Visual Studio Code plugin. If you want to work with SpecFlow BDD, so you have to use that plugin in your Visual Studio Code for doing that stuff. And then there are certain Azure DevOps plugin which help you to generate out of the box code if you want to do from Cypress or Playwright. So currently, AI, ML, and DevOps and security is my main focus area where I am currently being more involved in. And these are few of my tool and extension which are available as a free resource, so you can give it a try. And as far as my liking concern, and if I'm not playing, I play badminton. I used to play for Indian Railways back in India, and when I get some time, I do some painting as well. So these are some of my paintings. So this is the one which you see as scenery. This is something from Albany. My daughter click a picture. The second one is of our dog there in India, Leo, and this is my hero Bhagat Singh. So, which is I did recently. Cool. With that, I'll just get into the action. So first of all, I would just all of us are aware what is API. Just wanted to kind of give you a visualization what API does, what kind of interaction it has from end user perspective with the server which is serving us the API. So how we are doing a request, and in turn API send those requests to the associated or responsible system, and then give us a response in a particular format. A good example which you have seen when you have done your course, or when you are studying about it, is a restaurant management system. So API is like a middle layer which hide lots of things from us. It's like an abstraction. We don't want to know what is happening there. Say, for an example, as a customer, if I am in a restaurant, if I make an order, so it goes to a waiter or a person over there. That person, you just say, I want mild, I want this thing, I want this spices to be low, I want sweet something. So whatever request you give, so that waiter take that request and go backside there in the kitchen, and the chef does the thing. How chef does this thing, how he's getting the ingredient, what he's doing, it is kind of hidden from us. We don't want to get those details because there can be some IP which they are doing. That's how their restaurant is unique. But after that, order comes in and delivered to you, and that's the exact role which APIs plays into the picture. And if you look at this diagram, there are certain vulnerabilities as well if we don't follow those models. So I will be covering and using this analogy for our later examples to make it more clear. So with that, I have added some verbose. So what? How do you see, an API? So these are like traditional definitions. So it is like application programming interface, and how testing the security is important. So basically, have as you've seen. Sorry, the later diagram where customer and order is there. Say for an example, somebody said I am a customer, and somebody place that order, and somebody else comes and take that order from waiter. You have already been charged, but the order has been delivered to somebody else. So this is like a vulnerability. So there has to be some identification mechanism there. What if there is somebody else from some other restaurant, they want to sneak peek into how you are building the order, how you are cooking the order. So that is another area of security and vulnerability. So that's how we do kitchen enclose. We have that area covered. If you are doing that, you have to show something over the phone that this is the order which I am just taking it away from there. And as you see, just simple example where you see just order has been lost from the customer, but in industry there are lots of experienced hackers there. They are just trying to find a minimal vulnerability, and they can exploit it. And it's not only like costing them money to the organization, but it also costs them reputation. So if the data has been leaked, or some other thing has been, the credit card number has been compromised, so the monetary part as well as the reputation part as well, nobody is going to trust that organization. Then it is again going to take a lot of time to build that reputation again, or it's not sure whether we will be able to do it or not. So now what is happening in API, why API is critical, because what we see on the website is like user interface, but behind the scene the main traffic goes through API, and that's how it's make it more important to take care of the security of the APIs. And with that, now you see there are not only software like web application or mobile application, but nowadays there are lots of internet of things, connected device, like you how you do your tap card, that data goes through there, how some of the security cameras which takes the photograph, which scans the barcode, and which kind of does something based on the moving vehicle. So it becomes very important that we are not able to hack those security system. If there are any vulnerability, what kind of vulnerability can be, we can identify, and we can stop those things, or we can at least prevent those things, or we can find those things upfront that these are my vulnerabilities, and we can control those. And another good example of API vulnerability is if hackers get access of your API, if those are not protected well. So, say for an example, I am a retailer, and my website is getting launched today, but there are some competitors which don't want that website to be up and running on my launching day. They start attacking my website using the APIs. So the moment my real customer comes there, the my server is being overloaded with the API calls, and my customers are not able to get access to my website, or it is too slow. So which is normally we see the attacks which is coming there. But for preventing those attacks, so we have to just make sure something called denial of service or DDoS. So this attack is an example of DDoS. So how my site can prevent those, and you might have heard about Akamai. So those are like site prevention approaches which nowadays teams are using to do that. So with that, I will take you a little bit more deeper on. So what are the things which are considered in API security? So how what are the protocols? What are the simple mechanism through which we kind of consider securities around? So the first thing is, so when something is going on, so you guys might have heard about a term called observability and monitoring. So with like Dynatrace, Datadog, or Azure App Insight. So those are like some tools which does some monitoring for us. And especially in banking industry or financial industry, they normally, kind of see the transaction which user perform. But if there is a transaction, so for an example, I live in Auckland and I am doing most of my transaction like petrol and everything in Auckland, but somehow a transaction is being made by made in Wellington on a petrol pump, which is like unusual, and that's how the frauding system, or they see that as abnormal transaction, and they kind of log it. So the first thing which comes into the picture is how we are doing a monitoring and how we are performing some analytics around those monitoring, not just recording but taking some actions, which monitoring analytics combined together, which comes like an observability. And the second thing is access control. So that is another way to secure the API. So first thing is we have to have a mechanism to monitoring and performing some analytics. Second thing is the access control. And the third thing is like content validation. So it shouldn't be the case that uh, that API, which kind of performing something, and you give us some malicious data, and it start crashing our system. A good example is one company, they used to have a robot. So in that robot, they use that robot to take the disk out and just insert it when, and some request come for increasing the hardware request. But what if somebody say take the disk out and throw it? So it should not do those actions on that API. So content validation has to be there, and that's the way you might be performing the API testing. So if you don't give a particular header value, it doesn't entertain that API call. So that is like a content validation example. And the another thing is rate limit. So this particular rate limit is like if somebody at some particular machine, if they are sending you say 1,000 order in a particular time frame, it shouldn't be the case because no simple human being can does those things. So those anomaly or those transactions, those rate limits should be there. So now I will give you a quick idea, as I told, monitoring and analytics. So the critical part of this particular thing is the anomaly detection. So if you see something abnormal, so it should send an alert to us. Then the another thing is how we are making the call. So the way user interacts with it. So API call goes into a certain way, log in, perform something, select something, and do it. But if you see that directly somebody is placing an order without selecting the product or something, so you can see the sequence has been broken. So that should give you an alert. So that's how nowadays you might see in implemented tools. So you get this kind of vulnerability alerts. The another thing is geofencing and geo velocity checks. So for an example, if I'm sitting here, I'm launching my website. If I see a traffic on, say, I have a website where I'm delivering the milk or normal grocery, which is for Auckland, but somebody from outside of New Zealand and trying to order in those, that check has to be there. And system should be sending us those vulnerability or those kind of alerts. The another thing is on access control. So there has to be a mechanism for authorization. So you should be having a valid header, valid security token on both the sides. First, we check on client side, then on the server side. Then the another thing is those rule has to be defined. So there are certain API policies. So if you are working on Azure's APM or application program management API management system, or you are working on APG, which is Google provided. So you see there are some policies, some reverse proxy, forward proxy rules. So that has to be enabled and that has to be there. So this is also another way how this security thing being implemented on API level. And then another thing is the consent management and enforcement. Again, this is on policy level only, but this is required. How we gonna agreed and worked on same some set of rules. But this thing is important. As a tester, I can kind of look at this content validation. So what kind of input I am sending, what kind of output I am expecting from that the API. So for an example, you are sending something which is kind of breaking the API. So when this API give me the output, it shouldn't show the database name, database connection is not met, your password is wrong, or your username is wrong. So that the attacker shouldn't get that information. What is the resource? If the password is only wrong or the username is wrong. So it gives those kind of information. We as a user, as a tester, we go and check those input and output validation. The another thing is schema and pattern rules. So how well formed our JSON or say or SOAP, if you are using XML based protocols, so how their schema is arranged. Is it giving me the data according to that, or if I give something else, it is going to crash server resources? And then this one is important. So how you might see nowadays, we instead of sending the username password, we generate some tokens on runtime. Or say for an example, if my calls are there, so we normally send captcha, which is like visible or invisible captcha with the request, so that they can verify, yes, you are the authorized person, you are the one who is not attacking the site, you are having good intention to access those APIs. And then the another thing is related to how you can set some limits around those. So if you see 50, more than 50 requests on a particular API from a single machine, that is something which should alert the admin or the security team, hey, something suspicious is going on there. And then spike protection, suddenly if the request goes up, instead of consuming all the resources and making your system slow, it just cut down that particular traffic, and then it should stop attacking on system. So on high level, in this particular slide, we have discussed about what are the critical part of security. So what does API security entails, what it contains. So monitoring and analytics, access control, the content, and the rate limit. And now when this thing comes into the picture, so you know there are lots of things going on, everybody faces something different. So what is a common way how we can combine this vulnerability together? So is there a rule, say for an example, for our web application development, web testing, so we follow contents from W3C. And same way, if we have API related security, do we have anything related to security? We have API standards which we are following and we are practicing, like open your open APIs like JSON based, GraphQL, those are schema and validations are there. What about API security? So for those, uh, you know big companies and some open source company, they come together, they form a project which is called OWASP, so which is like open web application security project. So they have studied lots of vulnerability, then they come up with some kind of guidance. So what are the things you should be checking, what are the different kind of vulnerability which impacts lots of users. So with that they come up with some API security vulnerability, and they have assigned them, with a number, so which is like most critical, and which is like on warning level, but what kind of impact they can have on your system. So based on that, they have given some top 10 list, which is rating from starting from A1 to A10. And recently, they have also published the version for 2023. So they started capturing something from 2029. After that, we have something from 2021. And now we have something from 2023. But for this particular purpose, I have used a stable one, which is like 2021. So I am going through, but what they are doing from last version to this version to the next version, so they are grouping something together, they are retiring something from there, or they are combining two or three vulnerability into one vulnerability, depending upon the nature. So with that, I'll start with just take you through some description. So for OWASP, so what they have suggested uh, top 10. With top 10, so the first one which comes like broken access control. So as the name suggests, something around access control is like broken. So for an example, uh, you are using FTP site. So FTP is for transferring your file securely from your client machine to the servers, or you are using FTP for sorry, you are using FTP for transferring a file. You are using SSH for sending the data securely, but somehow those access controls are not working. Somehow those control has been broken. Say for an example, you are having a site's URL, so you might have seen with latest MVP control. So when you log into the website, so it shows you slash, and after that it shows you your order ID. So for an example, I am a user and Ronak is another user. Ronak has placed an order 101, and when I go in my site, I have placed an order say 129. But if I change the URL, which says slash 121 for my, if I change 1 to say 6, which is Ronak's order, if I am able to access that order, that means access control is broken. Otherwise, it should say no data found, or you are not authorized to do, those transactions or those operations over there. So that is a good example of broken access control. The second thing which is there is cryptographic failures. So, cryptographic failure, a good example is you might have seen when you go onto shopping site or you open your banking application where you would want to see your account number or your credit card number, the last four digit has been shown. Or if you see your national ID or your driving license number, so kind of few details are shown, not everything, so that by mistake if something get revealed, so not the entire thing has been kind of exposed, but there are certain scenarios where this has been not kind of captured. So for an example, when you are sending the data back for transaction to payment system, if it is sending the plain credit card number, this is some risk. If your security protocol or your security survey certificate is not doing that cryptography, not encrypting, just sending the plain text, then this is an example of cryptography failure. And then the next thing is the injections. As the name suggests, it injects something malicious in your system. Say for an example, uh, in previous days, how username and password, when OAuth and other thing was not there, so they normally get your username, get your password, they go check into database, select username and password from the database. When this thing equal to this, if it is matches, it give you a true. True means it give you a result back. But if the same thing, you can fire it from your web application, say one equal to one, which is always true. So if it gives you a true result, that means you have SQL injection vulnerability in your website. Or if you are sending some data, which in turns, calling the database queries and returning some result. For that instance, the same example, I would say if I am able to access data from somebody else, but just generating the number randomly, that's how most of the hacker does. So that is site or that application is under injection vulnerability. With that, the next one is insecure design. So as the name suggests, insecure design. So say for an example, uh, you might have seen on banking application and some of the other sites as well. So when you try to log in, so it says one of the five attempt failed, two of the five attempt failed. The moment you reach five, it locked your account for 10 minutes. If you do it again, then it lock for this one, and then it permanently lock. But if those things are not there, it allow you to do multiple logins. So then there is some issue with that particular configuration. So that design or something which we may have to consider it like insecure design vulnerability. And the another thing is, uh, say in secure design, so you might see nowadays everything comes from a captcha. So that particular captcha, what it does, it stop those bot attacks. But if your website allow those bot attacks, then it is another example of insecure design. The next thing which comes into picture is like security misconfiguration. So as the word suggests, security misconfigurations. Say for an example, you might have seen some applications which you install, or say for an example, if you bring a new security system which you install on your home, so they by default come with a default password like admin or some other application like admin, but somehow this being not patched, this not being updated, so that also gives us some flaws in security. By default there shouldn't be anything default configured. There has to be a way that you have to configure, then it configure your security or your login authority accordingly. But if that's not the case, then it is exposure to security misconfiguration vulnerability. And then there are certain other things you might have seen in the organization. We do software and hardware patching. So if we are not doing and we are running some old version, so that is also a security misconfiguration patching. So that's how in next slide I will be covering how we can kind of take a look at it. So for an example, last to last year we have seen uh, log4j attack, where you can go through your LDAP and you can attack server from log4j vulnerabilities. So if somebody has not patched that thing yet, so that is a vulnerability open, which comes under the category of security misconfiguration. Now the another thing is, which is vulnerable and outdated component, and this thing is like your OS update or your hardware update, or if there are certain components, certain application which you have not updated yet, and that's how been exploited by hackers. So you are at risk of that, but you should be uh, doing those update on regular basis. The another thing is identification and authentication failure. So that identification and authentication failure is, uh, so for an example, you see normal site. So say for an example, e-commerce website. So in e-commerce website on high level, we have two kind of portal. One portal is for the customer facing portal. Say for an example, I am selling say ice creams. So you will be seeing ice cream categories, then ice cream photograph, then ice cream amount and everything. There is another thing which is for managing those things, which we normally call backend or the management side. So normally slash admin, which gives you access of the admin side. But if you don't put just slash and just directly go with index.html something, it give access to the main site. But this is again some kind of vulnerability or some kind of hint which you we can give it to hacker that yes, this is something which is like available open, but you should be having some configuration around those. So how you want to give, say for an example, I logged in as a normal user, but if I know slash admin is admin, so if I do a slash admin, if I am able to access the website, that is a threat, a vulnerability, which we should be doing as part of the identification and putting some proper authentication on top of that. Now the next one is, which is on 8, and this is like uh, software and data integrity. So software and data integrity is, uh, how would I say, say for an example, if you are using printer at home. So normally you see an over the air uh, OTP, OIA. So what it does is over the air, it gives you a hardware or software or firmware update. So that signature is required so that you can identify, or your machine can identify, this is coming from a valid source. Otherwise, a malicious software can get installed in your printer and it might get corrupt. Or another example is your security camera, and that software or hardware firmware update. If it get updated with some malicious, so your camera and your security system will be hacked by somebody else. So that integration part is very important. So how you gonna do that? And believe me, this is particular thing, when most of the system get hacked, so it hacked by your repository or your data sources, so they normally go and do it. So that's how in all of the organization we have some whitelisted softwares, so that you can just trust and use those software only. Or in banks you might see you are not allowed to install any of the software. So there is a company portal or jamf profile for Mac, or something similar of that. So you will be seeing, and you are only allowed to install software from those portals only. Okay. And the next thing is security logging and monitoring failures. Say for an example, you are nowadays open source systems are very popular, so which kind of make you up and running pretty fast, reducing the cost of the organization. But those things require lots of patching. So for an example, is there is a flow which is kind of used by other hackers because it is open source, and there is a flaw. So if they come and start attacking that on some other, your organization website. So if there is no security logging or monitoring, you will never notice that somebody is doing that part. And this is something which we discussed in the previous slide as well. Monitoring and analytic is being critical part of it. So those kind of security vulnerabilities also there, that somebody is doing something but you are not logging. That's what you see. It's just A9. It's not like a high top level like A1 or A2, but still this is something has to be there. So nowadays there are some checks which make sure that you are doing some logging. And the final one is the you might have heard about this. So there is something called client side request forgery, and now there is something called server side request forgery. So as you see, forgery, so that means somebody is sending some data. If that not being validated, so you can compromise on some server side resources. So for an example, some data which you are protecting, but somebody else is doing that. So for an example, uh, www.abc.com. So the moment you see this website, so normally website run on the server and the port. So by default, if it is HTTPS, you see 443. You don't have to mention that, but it goes and connect with that. If you're doing SQL Server, so it does on 1423 or 142, 144, 1244 ports. So those are like default ports. But if you have not done those setting again, you have not updated, so you are open for some port scanning as well. So somebody will go look at the port scanning, they see this is the port open, and they can attack us there. But we do firewall and port setting in those. And then the another thing is your internal services, which might be running on 8080 81442, something like that. So it get under the threat as well, that this thing can be hacked. So these are on high level, uh, what API, different API security vulnerabilities. So in next slide, I am just going to talk about what are the security testing approach. So when it comes to API security testing, so there is just try to project SDLC, the software development lifecycle, how we can look for different type of testing. So there is something which is like on shift left, the left side of the deployment. So where we have code, how we can do that code analysis itself to find those vulnerability. So because this code is the static code, so we call this kind of scanning as SSAT. So it is like static application security testing. So like tool like Cynic or Sonar Cube, they have lots of database access of the vulnerability. They have the OWS, OS concept or their policies as well. They go check those there and say, yep, the code is vulnerable to this kind of, the top 10 vulnerability. And then, because our software is not just like the plain code we are writing, we also use some open source control or some third party tools. So the software configuration or the software component SC analysis, so which kind of run goes through the tool and say, yep, say for an example log4j, it says updated to latest version. Or if you're using some other open source tool like Selenium or something like which is there, so it can identify that those vulnerability or component analysis as well. And then the another thing which comes into the picture is all good, everything is fine, we have done everything. But when the system is actually deployed in production or live, when users are interacting with it, that's where it opens more uh, runtime vulnerability, so which we call as dynamic application security test. So where we start doing this. And the another thing where we hack system, or we want to make sure that system is not breaking, when we try to do some lots of permutation combination testing, so which we are calling as a pen testing. So that's where the things come into the picture. How we can start protecting those, what kind of vulnerability our applications are. So for doing that, we start doing testing into that particular stage or that particular level only. So the thing which we are going to focus here in next couple of slides, where I will be giving you a little demo as well, which I prepared for this presentation. So that is around dynamic application security testing, because SAST, Cynic, SonarCube, and other vulnerability scanning tool, those are part of our repository. The moment you check in, it runs the scan, it gives you the results. But that is, you have to have your application deployed somewhere, because in code scanning, if you are using some third-party APIs, if the vulnerabilities are those sites, you will never be get to know until it has been deployed. So with that, I will just quickly take you through that. As you know, application already being deployed and it is running on the server. We are accessing and testing it as a user perspective, the way we are doing API testing. So it is a black box testing. We don't have access to the code. Whereas SC analysis, component analysis, and static application security test, so those are like white box testing. And yes, as it is a dynamic application security, the running application is required. Latest code has to be deployed. So whatever the criteria we have for normal testing, same criteria applies here as well. Uh, as you see, because this is more on the right side after the application deployment. So we find this vulnerability later in the this stage. The later it is, the expensive it is. And then the good part is the static testing only find some code flaws, but this is like a really runtime permutation, so which gives us more result and more vulnerability, and save lots of effort. And we have to really think about like hackers, how really hackers does. So pen testing is a good example of that. With that, how we are gonna do this thing is in this enterprise tool. Can I do it using open source software? So for this purpose, os has released a tool called Z attack policy proxy, so which can be utilized, which is available open source. You can try that particular tool for performing application security, but uh, you know just make sure you get a consent from your related security or cyber security team first, because it is a security scanning tool. So we should be getting a permission for performing those, but most of the organization, they already utilize this tool. So with that, I will quickly jump into the demo. So what is a Z attack policy? So proxy. So this is the tool. So you will be seeing a simple interface. So normally when we are uh, performing a security testing, so during presentation or during those testing, we don't use UI. So it is just like how you use JMeter for development of your test cases. So you use UI, but when you run, you use the CLI mode or the containerized image. Same way, it also work in Dockers or run as a service, not as a UI. But for demonstration purpose, I have shown you this UI. So this particular UI is pretty simple. So normally, what we do is whatever site we want to explore or the API we want to explore. So those exploration, we come and do it from here. And when we start doing those tests, so as the name suggests, Z attack proxy, so it normally go and start attacking the application or the APIs. And as you see, it perform few things: active scan, and some force browser site, force browser directory, but it has some different kind of fuzzing rule as well, some random data generation as well. It performs some, it looks at your APIs, and according to the schema of the API, it start performing some actions. So what it does, it goes look for the URL, and when that URL is there, the API URL is there or endpoint is there, it goes, it look for the schema of those APIs. So for an example, you can get this information from Swagger. and you can see what are the input required, what is the output required. So it scans those APIs. Based on that APIs, it see, okay, if I try to do this thing, that means it is open for SQL injection, or it is not having anything for client side CSR, RF, forgery kind of vulnerability, or it perform all of the other checks, which are kind of 1 to 10, top 10 OS related vulnerability. So for, means I'm not gonna too much detail into OS, but how OS work is, it has some policies, so which is keep on updating online. So it download those policies as an add-ons, and when you start running those scan, so it goes through the way we run, write our automation test, check something which, response code is this, if we send this token is say invalid header, unauthorized. So similar kind of stuff, stuff it does. So for our demonstration purpose, what I have done is, and if you are performing any kind of testing using Z attack proxy, so team, please take a consent from your security team, because if you do something here and there, it might bring your the entire server down. So normally, as I said, there is something called passive scan. It just scan for vulnerability, and there is something called active scan. Active scan is more like pen testing. So we shouldn't be performing any active scan without getting consent from security team and without getting consent from your development team or the environment holders. So for this demonstration purpose, I have set up my API, because I am gonna do some testing. So I am doing this on my machine only, and then this particular API, what this API does, it's just a to-do item API. So it give me a list of what are the to-do items I have, and then it give me a list of the to-do item which I can delete, and then it give me a way, if there is an existing item, how I can patch that item, and finally, if want to access an item by ID, how I can get that item by ID. So let it run. And simultaneously, I have another application, which is a test application. Again, this is written in C Sharp only. So what this particular application does is, so this is like dealing with proxy, because it is a proxy Z attack proxy. So once that proxy is there, so it just say start scan, and it say just do an active scan or perform just analysis only. So these are something which we have configured in the application. So if you have your CI/CD pipeline, so you are running your test, you just pass your test through proxy, then those test results will get logged into Zattattack policy, from where you can generate a good report, which I will be showing you quickly. And then you can analyze and discuss this thing with your security team. Hey, I am getting this report, please look at this. So this is my API, which I was just telling you. So say for an example, if I want to create a to-do item, so it will create a to-do item for me. And if I come here and just search this item, so it will just give me or return me a list of my items like this. So now take a look at how my tool is gonna scan this one, and then I will show you the results as well. So the first of all, we have to in this solution, I just pass what is my Swagger open API specification, which is like swagger.json file, and then where my Zap is running. So normally Zap run on your 8080 port. And if I start my test, so what this particular test is going to do is, it is going to look at my Swagger, and then it's going to scan the vulnerability, and then it is going to list down those vulnerability in Zap. So let it run. and we will be seeing something on the site, so which this particular tool has scanned. And Tim, please start just sharing your questions as well. So if you look at over here, so it has starting doing the scan on my APIs. Then it is giving me some outcome if I have some alerts. So it will give some kind of alert output to me. And say for an example, now is the time if I want to perform say some kind of a direct attack on this one. So what's it's gonna look like? How what kind of request or what kind of data it's gonna send us, and then I will quickly show you. Cool. So if you see, it has started some scan here as well. I'll just maximize it. So it is sending lots of you know with some kind of random data. So now it is saying bad request. That's how server is handling those. But otherwise, it could have crashed, or it could have attacked. Team, please just this is what I have for the time being. But if you have any questions, so please feel free to ask those questions. Meanwhile, this scan is running.
Cool. Raj, there's a question. I'll put that on the screen. One of our LinkedIn user friend is asking, can we run the Zap CLI on Ubuntu? He's trying to launch a
Yes.
and in the pipeline, but it's not generating the report for him.
Sorry, what's that, Ronak?
Can we run Zap CLI on Ubuntu?
Yes, we can run on Ubuntu as well.
Right. And this gentleman, gentle lady, is saying that is doing that. It's launching the scan in the pipeline, but she's failing to generate the report. So, any tips? Do you know what might be going on?
Yes. So there are two things. So there is an API call for OWASP app, which is specifically generate the report. So you can use that API call for generating the report. So for an example, for my case as well, I have just created a test which kind of comes and generate uh, reports for me as well. So we can have similar kind of thing there as well.
Sure. There are a couple of more questions. You know, take them now, Raj.
Yes, please.
Cool. The next one, I'll just bring that on the screen.
I'm just shutting this down, otherwise it will slow my system.
Uh,
Yeah.
is it possible to demonstrate to launch a Zap scan using CLI mode on your Mac?
I can do that. So basically, if your Zap is running, so what we can do is, so let me quickly open this. So basically, it local host. If you open this like this, so you will be seeing the local APIs. So if you go on the local APIs, so whatever you want to perform, everything is available there. We can do that on here as well. Or if you want to do some other way, you want to but what you have to do is, so you have to go and look for the relative command. So it works, but again I would suggest just try to use the APIs ways. So that's how they have more support.
Cool. Thanks, Raj. Next one is from Shikha. She asks, are there any better tools than Burp for REST API?
For security testing,
I assume so.
rest can you repeat the question again, Ronak?
Is there any better tool than Burp, BURP, for REST API?
uh, Frankly speaking, being honest, I have not used that tool, Shikha. So but for API testing, you know I would say is, sorry, being more influenced by Microsoft, I use C Sharp. But there are another, if you are not fan of C Sharp, but Exom is something which is in Node.js, and then there is Rest Sharp in C Sharp, and Rest Assure in Java, which are like very well documented and very well supported tools or the frameworks.
Yeah, and somebody also suggested on the comment as a secure API from SmartPair, so something worth considering too.
Yeah.
Cool. That's towards the end of the questions, guys. Please keep them coming if you've got any more. Yeah, back to you, Raj.
No, thank you, Ronak. This is what I have for today. But if you have any questions, so please feel free to let us know.
Cool. We'll just wait another few seconds if there's another
Yeah.
question coming. Otherwise, we can quickly wrap it up. Uh, don't see anything. Cool. Sounds good. So that brings us to the end of this session. Firstly, thank you guys for joining us. And most importantly, thank you, Raj, for making time. And this is brilliant. A few things that I picked up which I didn't know. So thank you so much. It was really, really good session. And I'm sure a lot of us have benefited from it. Uh, yep. Thank you, Raj. Before I lose everyone, quick spiel on something. I'll probably share my screen. So this is an overview of all the certification offerings from ISKI, and I wanted to explicitly point you out to a specialist certification called secure for security tester. And it's called like ISTQB security tester certification. It's also called as CTSec. So if you guys are passionate about security testing and would want to sharpen your skills, so that's one option for you guys to consider. Cool. That's up from me too. Thank you guys for making time. I hope you guys enjoyed this session and hope you all have a really good rest of your day. Take care. See you. Bye.